Okay, guys, I suggest to start, and some people will join us after MakerDAO community call. So first of all, thank you for your time, enthusiasm, and involvement to support this initiative. We started this after events on Thursday with the aim to design keeper pool product to make keepers market sustainable, to provide an opportunity for everyone with any capital to become a keeper and to gain some yield on their assets. And why we are doing these community calls, the main purpose is to keep ongoing feedback pipeline to understand the real needs and demands from market side to design the goods product and to make this efficient. Also, we are open for different types of contributions and which may help to deliver this product as fast as possible with great features and user-friendly interface. So as an agenda for this call, we are proposing the following. First of all, let's make some introduction from each other so everyone will understand why each person is here, what is his purpose here, what his regular activity, and how anyone can contribute if she would like to do it. I mean, it could be development contribution, some feedback for a user interface, or any other ideas, and some design session participation. So I suggest for everyone to start introducing himself, having 1-2 minutes, so we will meet each other more closely. So who would like to start?
Hi everyone, I can start. My name is Rinat. I was the guy who spent entire Thursday until 9 p.m. on the Maker community call, documenting what happened, determining the causes, and studying behavior of keepers during the high periods of volatility that day. And I was the one who wrote the post on the MakerDAO forum and then posted it on Ethereum. Really flattered for so many of you supporting this cause. So my background is I'm a co-founder and part of a risk team at Atomica. Atomica is working on non-custodial permissionless risk transfer markets protocol, which would look like Compound and Uniswap, allowing people to buy coverage for contract hacking, admin key loss, and theft of funds due to these reasons, as well as economic attacks like bank run. And I began working with Maker initially as an individual, then as someone who wanted to contribute by building what we call a graceful unwinding tool, which allows vault holders to protect themselves from liquidations. And that's how I got involved in the Maker community. Later on, I had a chance to work on the as a risk team on the new collateral, specifically its accounts receivables that will be applying to multi-collateral DAI. So what I've done there, I build a simple risk model that and the parameters for this collateral application, such as stability fee, debt ceiling, loan to value ratios, and together these two projects, graceful unwinding and the application for multi-collateral DAI, gave me an opportunity to understand the inner workings of multi-collateral DAI, which is not a simple project, and that's what brought me here. And my involvement, how I would like to contribute, is with organizationally and technically contribute to achieving the ultimate goal, which is a live keeper pool, non-custodial mechanism of participation in collateral actions primarily. So this is the outcome I'm seeking, and where I can contribute is with architecture, and I have done some homework and could propose some items for later today for the call, or for the upcoming discussions around the around design of various mechanisms that could reduce the risk of the keeper pool exposure to high volatility, for example, through an interesting approach to use oracles. And the second mechanism is to probably consider moving some computation to an off-chain environment. So that's how I would like to contribute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Renat. Let's move forward with other participants. Move Perfect, are you here? Would you like to make an introduction?
I don't know who was that. I am Manuel from Porero Fire. I have worked with Renat in the past. We have helped Atomica to deliver a few products around Maker. Protofire is a specialized development shop working with protocols to bootstrap supply, demand, build a lot of tools, SDKs, bots, liquidity bots. And in the past, we have been contributing to the Maker DAO ecosystem by developing insurance tools for CDP holders, things around previous solutions to graceful unwinding. We are also the developers of the Maker gov.science governance dashboard. Pretty cool. For that, we needed to go very deep into the contracts around governance, and also we developed APIs based on the Graph protocol, where you can you have to model what is the smart contracts, how do they look like, make all the transformation and make them available nicely for developers that they can consume through a GraphQL API. And that will lead us to fight with the contrast, with the names, and also we did some translation from 3 letters and 4 letters variables and functions to developer-oriented and developer-friendly names. And our how we want to contribute here is to also provide technical solutions, business solutions of our experience during the past years, and try to build tools to not happen this again anymore. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. I believe your expertise will be very useful. Okay, let's go further. Alex, are you here? Would you like to make an intro?
Till Alex is muted, let me introduce myself. My name is Elena Travkina. I lead Atomica engineering team and I'm one of active contributors of this initiative. I joined Atomica team more than 1 year ago and helped Atomica to build their risk transfer protocol, risk pools product, and I am here to understand the community needs, the pains of community, and can convert them to the scope of work for the future Keepers pool, to the architecture of the future Keepers pool. I'm here to share the technical ideas, the ideas how this pool can be organized on the level of the smart contracts.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's go ahead and Steven, would you like to make an intro?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I've been following Maker for probably like the last 3 years, and I know that the Keeper bots are written in Python, and my specialty is Python, so I just figured that there is some way that I contribute, and especially since I'm a pretty active community member, and then I'm learning some front-end dev with React, so I just figured I could potentially be useful and just contribute in whatever way I see possible. So yeah, so that's me.
Yeah, that's great. So you were running your Keeper, right?
So I've actually never run a Keeper. I made a gas prediction model to work with DYDX's Keeper bot. But yeah, so I never actually ran one yet. So
okay, got it. Nevertheless, it's great to have your expertise here as well. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go. Other Stefan, are you here? Would you like to make an intro? Okay. Next, John, would you like to make an intro?
Hey everyone, this is John. I'm one of the founders of the Atomica risk transfer project, along with Renat and Elena, and then Vadim's new to the team as well, building risk transfer products. But we also built some risk mitigation products for Maker. So we're kind of looking at transfer and mitigation of risk across crypto and DeFi specifically right now. So we'll be working very closely on this as well with the rest of the team. Thanks everyone for hopping on the call. Look forward to getting feedback from folks and working with some of you hopefully in the future.
Great, thank you. Maxim, would you like to make an intro?
I guess it's me. Am I the only Maxim? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi guys. Maxim, founder of Sentiment. Maybe some of you know us. We did make at some point of time the most comprehensive metric dashboard for MakerDAO when it was not multi-collateral but single collateral. And yeah, well, our platform is mostly for investors, portfolio managers, and all this kind of people to also assess the risk, but the risk in our terms, so like when the price is about to go down, or opportunities when we believe the price can go up. And for this particular reason, yeah, we do collect now. We rebuilt our most comprehensive set now. We do have multi-collateral DAI too. Maybe we'll publish it, I don't know, tomorrow, day after tomorrow. So we on the data side. So on one part, me as a founder of CEO of Sentiment, I'm interested if I can help in any way. On the other side, we do have our treasury, where part of it, like in DAI, part of it in Ethereum, and if I can participate, and it's easy enough for me not to spend much time to be part of auction, the Keeper, Yeah, I can do it. I'm always like since 3 years in community, and whenever I can contribute or support, I will do it. It just till now I could not do it. I could not participate in auctions. So it was too much barrier and or too much effort to keep it running. If we can make it easier so that I can run, well, I guess we achieved the goal that like almost anyone can run it.
Yeah, that's our plan.
Yes, good.
Maxim, quick question. Yes. The data said that you mentioned that you were about to release. What do you think maybe the use cases? Can the keeper pool consume some of the data? What problems could it solve, and how much would it cost, and what's in it for you?
Well, you know, the data we have is it's pricing data from centralized exchanges, on-chain, and social data. Now, on-chain, all of us have, and I think I don't know, we're not the only ones who did smart contract reading, decoding, parsing, and splitting into specific signals or metrics. So we can do it if it's necessary. Or I heard that I don't remember yet the names. I'm very bad at the names. Sorry, guys. Someone did even put it on the graph protocol. Wow, it's amazing. So we can use that, or we can provide what we are doing now. We are tracking now at the moment. I could even share our conversion if we have later on some time. Prices of DAI over time, like time series, or volume, trading volume on all DEXs, and amount of debt created like in lifetime, or amount of debt destroyed or removed from system. We have it right now, if it helps in any way. So sure, and I don't think we will charge so small community for doing goodwill for a general purpose. So I think I could share it. Just share it.
And the last question related to the topic that Steven mentioned, that he worked on developing a gas prediction market. Do you have data on the gas price, like in historical or prediction? Anything about that?
That's a good question. I need to revert to our developers. I know I know that we have gas used, but gas price historical.
Like hourly or daily. That would be interesting.
How the gas price is it stored anywhere?
Yes.
Well, no. There are a couple of places that that we know that store the gas price, and that might be a way to enable the keeper pool to move to move some of the risk of the gas price volatility away, and ensure that the keeper pool can always have more or less stable gas price throughout its operation. Even if it's very high, it will get compensation. So that could be an edge of that keeper bot against others, allowing to participate in liquidations of some of the smaller walls where it may not be economically feasible to participate.
Okay, but if I heard correctly, someone already did a gas price prediction. So I guess this person who did it, he's already ahead of.
Yeah. Okay.
If we start doing it, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Next, Konstantin Andrianov would like to make an intro.
Hi there. I'm Konstantin, and currently I'm involved in two projects. The first one is at risk. It's a decentralized insurance protocol platform, and the second one is Atomica. So I'm software engineer, and I can contribute this project as a developer. So thanks.
Great. Also, we have other Konstantin here. Would like to make an intro as well.
Yes. Hi there. I'm Konstantin Tyumenkov, and I'm working for Atomica as well as the rest of the team in the role of business analyst. And I perform here tasks related to requirements organization and documentation provisioning for all the products that are currently being developed. Thank you for your attention. That's it from my side.
Great, thank you. Also, we have like few people more. The next one is Sid Shihar. Would you like to make an intro?
Yeah, sure. Hey, my name is Sid Shaker. Yeah, I'm one of the founders of Token Analyst. We're an on-chain analytics startup. Yeah, essentially I was running Keeper bots this past week to compete with you know, some of the addresses that basically won most of the DAI in MakerDAO for zero. Yeah, found some of the issues firsthand, experienced some of the issues firsthand, including getting a bot up and running, understanding the nuances of bidding and how to essentially outbid low bids and how to get bids in time in high, you know, network clogged situations. And then also understanding the nuances of like the different parameters that can be tuned to optimize each bot. Really went through the fire for that this weekend and even yesterday. In fact, there were some liquidations. So I was running a bot. It's still running, but you know, there's a lot that can be done to make it a lot easier to use for the community. So would love to help out on different fronts, from development to, you know, to data. We have nodes. So yeah, just different fronts.
Yeah, that's awesome to have someone from a battlefield directly, and yeah, it would be great to hear during discussions your experience, because we have a bunch of questions related to the points you mentioned. So yeah, it was great.
Sweet.
Okay, let's move forward. I see a few people have joined. Chucky, would you like to make an intro? Okay, Shan3, would you like make an intro? Okay, also I asked few people at the beginning, maybe right now you're ready to make some intro. If not, we can go further. More perfect. Alex, Luis, are you here? Okay. Okay, thank you guys for your introduction. I think few more people will join us after MakerDAO call, so there will be more expertise here. So what I suggest, how to proceed. Our engineering lead, Elena, will outline our high-level architecture we come up with. And after that, we will cover some questions our team has as well. Yeah, also to make it more efficient, you can open a GitHub link that we share it in the chat. If you do not have it, I'll send it right now in this Zoom meeting. 1 second.
While Vadim sharing the link, I will share my screen that you can see.
Yeah, I have a question. Does it make sense to wait for the people to come back from the maker call before we discuss the architecture and collect feedback? And now maybe use this time to maybe ask everyone on the call what are the requirements or expectations that each of us could bring to a pooled keeper bot, right? And what are the main issues or problems and challenges that exist? and then when people come back, we go into the discussion of the architecture. Does it make sense?
From my point of view, it makes sense.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, we can proceed this way. So maybe anyone who has something to share in the first place, Sid, Chihar, maybe you can start.
Well, I can start because I would like to use it. So, and,
okay, yeah, sure.
I don't need any front-end, much front-end interface or fancy UI UX. I'm fine with running in our infrastructure. Other tokens, of course, also have our full nodes. Everything is set up. But keep in mind, like it's my requirements. Yeah.
Sure.
So if there is a set of audited code, which in Docker file, even better. So I can deploy it in infrastructure. I don't need anything more. And there should be some console is good with some output, and I can send some parameters. So if it helps, like it doesn't have to be super fancy. We have like our team is big, 30 people, so there will be people who will help me to the setup. And but it just has to be the most important. But I believe it has to be quite nicely covered with I don't know as a test or audited by peer community, because I will put in the play like 1-2 million. I don't know. It will be a substantial amount of money. So, and if it's lost, well, I think I will be upset. Yeah, so that's from my side, my requirements. Yeah.
Got it. And what would be your requirements, if any, for a pooled deployment where there will be a pool where you could allocate, let's say, certain amount towards this strategy or that strategy, or you only would run your own keeper bot and compete with the pool? So what would make it more interesting for you to participate in a pool versus compete with that?
That's a very good question. Me personally, I'm always on my own. Whenever it's about a substantial amount of money, I like to reduce risk as much as possible. Reduce risk for me. I have full control what I'm doing. I'm not using even any aggregators. I'm not using anything. I do all transactions myself. Well, maybe in a year or two it will change, but now it's like too much risk. But on our community, I know quite some people, and I mentioned them will be cool, and they don't have much money to participate. I don't know, maybe some has 10, 20, 50,000 maximum. So, and their requirements will definitely be okay. We want to pool and like to try to outcompete people like me even. And it's fine because at the end of the day, I don't really care if I will, I don't care as much if I get this Ethereum on the liquidation. My main concern is to keep price and liquidity as good as possible. So if it's achieved, it's fine. And if I get from time to time some liquidation, well, so be it. So very good. For me personally, I don't need to be pooled, but there are some people, and maybe if it starts growing, we can invite them, or we will have to invite more people who are potentially want to be pooled.
Understand.
Or maybe in the call there are people who want to be pooled. Yeah.
Understood. And what is your strategy for allocation of capital in the periods where there is no volatility, no liquidations? What do you plan to do with the funds?
Well, you know, where sentiment is behavior analytic platform. So for me, there is always enough opportunities. Well, at least we see.
Yeah, there is no shortage of opportunities for you.
Yeah. But that's been said. I don't remember time when there was nothing. Either when the market is growing, then they start increasing DSR and stability fee. So then I decide, as I go leverage long with Ethereum, some period of time I do it, but when I see it became too intensive or too high, then I switch to DAI back and I just keep it in a vault. So there are always periods of time when I keep my money in a vault.
Understand.
Like in DAI.
And when you're referring to the word money, is it you mentioned the treasury and the sentiment project overall, right? Are you referring to just the money of the treasury in the project, or your personal funds that you basically allocate as an individual?
Both. Yeah. I also use my own money. Well, with my own money, I can be more risky. With our treasury, I try to be as risk averse as possible.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. And Sid, how about you? What are the most important lessons you learned being in the trenches in the war zone?
Yeah. I think some of the key stuff was the open sourced auction keeper bots from the Maker team wasn't really fit for purpose compared to the kind of strategies that the winner was running. So essentially, from what we learned, is that the winner was monitoring the bids in real time at the mempool level before they were even included in the in a transaction to then smartly outbid by 1 to half a basis point, just to get as thin of a spread as possible. So the key then was getting it in right before the auction closed. So some of the auctions that expired at the end of certain hours, we configured the open source bots to put in the bids right at the end of the hour, but unfortunately we were still too slow. So it was almost a matter of speed, where this person would always beat you because just had a faster infrastructure set up. So it almost required a kind of fine tuning of from the node side of things to capture all the events and parse them in real time as fast as possible. And then from the execution side of things to get in bid, to have enough capital in a VAT to then allocate to auctions as and when they happen. So from the having enough capital side, the pool aspect helps definitely, so that you can bid on as many auctions as possible. Especially now that they've increased the time to 6 hours, there's going to be plenty of auctions when ETH experiences volatility. And then from the bot side, just kind of a more holistic perspective of where's the node infrastructure going to be, because you can't really use Infura or anything like that. You need to have a parity node and parsing events in real time. And what's the infrastructure going to look like, from the bot side? So that's going to be a key aspect of this being a success.
I see. And what are the main issues that you see when it comes to making it non-custodial? Do you see significant problems there that are unresolvable at this time, or you think it's doable?
I think it's pretty doable. It's not, the custodial part doesn't really. So for one, there's the concept. I mean, within Maker itself, maybe some of you are aware, but there's all these different sub modules, so to speak. There's the concept of the VAT, where you deposit money in to then put bids in, and then before the VAT, you also have you can put lots. So there's different auctions that are all bidded in different lots, and you can choose how much money from the VAT goes to each of these auctions. So in terms of parameters to be configured, it's just something to be considered of when there's multiple people, to how do you operate efficiently as a group? I mean, how does that decision-making process happen? Especially if you're codifying that and it's open source, then you kind of lose a bit of the competitiveness, because then someone can just kind of reverse engineer and say, this is how this bot is operating. So I'm gonna try to beat it, effectively.
I understand. So if we were to consider this, the impact of it, right? The open source nature kind of could bring a disadvantage to a pool, because its strategy is open while the strategy of competing auction participants is not, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's an interesting.
By the way, did you win any
problem,
auction?
Yes, we did.
Win any auction?
We did.
Awesome.
We did. But not as much of a discount, obviously.
What was the discount? That is the question.
I think the max we got was 15%, which was decent. But then again, ETH was fluctuating pretty wildly. So yeah. And then again, for the ones that we did get more, we had a 25% on discount in on one of them, and the guy beat us. The guy or the girl or the team, whatever it is, a 0xB00B. address. So that's yeah. So yeah, then again, it was evident from that alone that he or she or they were monitoring the mempool pretty intensively to put in their bids. Because we got our bid in right at the end of the hour. It was like 5 p.m. UTC, and that's when the auction closed. And there were no bids, and we were running our node infrastructure ourselves as a company, a token analyst. And so, yeah, it's essentially so. There's one aspect is there's the maker team themselves uses tools like Vulcanize, for example, to access certain data faster rather than just relying on the node. The raw open source auction keeper bot relies on node access instead of Vulcanize access. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Just the speed of data delivery and execution, really. If we can be essentially as a group the fastest executing bot, even with a simple strategy, at least that'll serve as a backstop for others, like to make it kind of anti-competitive in a sense.
Yeah, can you elaborate on that? What is the nature of this limitation?
In terms of the speed, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially who can get in the bid fastest towards the end of the hour as soon as when the auction is closing. That's essentially what it came down to in the past week. And so it was like cat and mouse game, you know, and we were monitoring the mempool as it came, transactions as they came. So the step process that the bot follows is first to get approved, and then to send a transaction into the VAT, and then from the VAT to then bid on auctions, to monitor auctions and bid on auctions. And one thing is, once you send a bid for one of the auctions, that bid lasts for 6 hours. So accidentally, if you misprice a bid for an auction, say you do it too high, that bid is the highest bid and no one's going to bid against you for that auction. If it's like, you know, so for example, we noticed other bids in the auction and we kept outbidding them to actually essentially win the auction. You know, that bid lasts for 6 hours. So it's forever in there. So when you want to adjust your pricing, for example, that's also an issue because you have your previous bid to compete against and you can't really withdraw that bid. That's one aspect. And then the second is, if you haven't put in a bid yet and you're waiting till the end of the hour to see what other bids are there to beat them, it becomes a matter of speed of infrastructure, purely of efficiency. And so that was a hard truth we learned the past few days. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. That is enormous amount of insight.
I have one question now. So this is indeed very interesting sharing. Does it mean that typically this is supposed to be 30% discount by default? It's like it gets liquidated at 30% discount, correct? Like Ethereum.
Yeah.
So it means if at the end of the auction time, there are no bids and you're sitting here and your competitor sitting there and you think, okay, now I will supply only one bid. And one supply is 25% discounted price and another 24. So this who gives higher price, he will win.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay. So and the owner of CDP who will get liquidated, he will get this full price, or how does it work?
Well, it's auctioned off in lots. So you know, depending on how much DAI you have in your VAT. So for example, at times we had, you know, a few thousand DAI, at times we had like, you know, tens of thousands of DAI in the VAT. And so usually the lots were in like 50,000 ETH lots. So 50,000 DAI, sorry, 50,000 DAI lots. And so, yeah, it kind of gets split up based on how many bids are there. So how much you can contribute at a higher price, and then it goes to the next.
Okay. Okay. Actually, I'm just wondering, does it mean that if there is a higher competition or like entry barrier is lower, and those who really want to win, they will have to increase the price even at the last second, but they will have to increase the price. So the owners of CDP, they will get a better liquidation price, so to say.
Yeah, exactly. If there's more competition in the auctioning, there's definitely the owners are definitely getting a better deal.
Oh, this is a good thing for the whole
community.
I think that was for the whole infrastructure.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, that was the goal of the maker community. But, you know, there was only this one keeper bidding for a large part of the weekend and early Friday. So, you know, that was what, you know, we tried to compete with them, and we did on a few of them. But then obviously the power of the infrastructure plus the other aspect to deal with is when in times of network clogging, like times when most liquidations happen is when ETH is as volatile as it was this past week. And that's when the network is as clogged as it is. So gas prices is another big aspect. We spend, thousands on gas really to get our transactions in during that time of congestion, and optimizing that in terms of the returns you could possibly get, because it's essentially a parameter. Can you win this bid or not? Based on your pricing and based on other bids. And if you're the last one in, and you're spending maybe like $500, $600 for a few transactions to go through, it starts to become a efficiency optimization game where how much gas are you spending in these times of liquidations. So yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Because you really need to get into the block like in the very next block or like very next few blocks. Oh.
Exactly.
Right, and the impact of gas, how if there would be a way to kind of put a cap on maximum gas you pay and have some other people to compensate you for the unusually high gas you spend, could this be some even a small form of competitive advantage for the pooled keeper bot or whoever runs with this capability?
Yeah, I think it could. It depends on if you can get it included. It depends on the state of the network. So, we were calling APIs to get both pricing and get gas rates. So to then adjust our rates, right? So to pay more gas or pay less gas, be more optimal, and then also adjust a discount on the pricing based on the fair market value of ETH. So that, yeah, I think. Yeah, it's a big parameter to be adjusted. That was another big sticking point for me in terms of the bot. So the Maker team, they had the raw auction keeper bot, and then they also had the Dockerized auction keeper bot. And there's gas first for, you have to send an approval transaction when you're starting up the bot, which requires gas, which by default takes the default gas of the node. It doesn't allow you to parameterize that. And then only the gas that's spent in the actual sending of the bidding, that's what's parameterizable. So making each aspect of the whole process parameterizable is, I think, a huge plus add. Yeah.
Makes sense. Very interesting. And what's your take on the impact and opportunities remaining for keepers after the tightening of the parameters on the MCD protocol side at the auctions? How much of the problem is going to solve, and what are the opportunities and problems that may remain?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of increasing the time, it definitely makes it wider open field instead of the short time periods when quick these the guys who are running the speedy infrastructure always kept winning. Here we have more of opportunity to observe the bids that are out there and then put in something competitive. So yeah, I think that's a big deal. And now there's generally just more awareness of this issue. So to have some sort of backstop mechanism at all times, so you're constantly there as a presence, is a huge deal as well. So I think that's where this whole thing comes into effect. Like, is it something that's easy to run for everyone? So one other thing that I tried personally was their UI. So they had a Maker auction helper front end that allowed you to place bids, because essentially our bot was not getting in bids as competitively as it could be. So I manually tried looking at certain auction IDs and seeing that the bids, the highest bids that were there, and placing those bids. And manually, it's just impossible to compete with some of the players that are out there just via the UI, because I mean, it's, first of all, it just takes time, and secondly, it's just completely unfeasible. So from that side, that was a huge learning as well. How competitive this game is, and to really be a player in the future, or at least to have like a standard backstop where even running simple strategies as a pool, you can win more because you essentially have more capital, and you have some sense of like a base bidding for all auctions, so it doesn't go below a certain price. So that the zero never happens. You know, I don't think it'll happen again because of the awareness. But then again, it took almost 6-7 hours to just get the bot up and running for me, and I was working with like 2 others as well. So
I see. And how were you monitoring the price of ETH to DAI, and where did you run liquidations on just Uniswap? And how important was to have an up-to-date information on the price of ETH that you can get after let's say you win the auction, right? Then you need to sell and recycle, right?
yeah, that's super key. So I was getting the price from a whole bunch of different exchange APIs. So we have like a network of like 15, 16 exchanges, centralized exchanges, where we could like the kind of fair market value, just doing our own calculation instead of relying on a third party provider. And then the other thing to keep in mind was the lag with the OSM price, like the maker Oracle price. There was kind of a lag, and there was a big spread between the maker Oracle price and the real fair market price of ETH, especially during that volatile time. So that was another opportunity to kind of arb in a sense. Yeah. And that's the price feed was one aspect, and then the gas as well was another aspect. So gas from the on-chain perspective, what's the optimal gas to spend, and then price, what's the optimal price to quote, and then adjust that with the current bids that are in play, and say, okay, based on this bid, I could win. Either you're topping up a bid or you're putting the first bid in an auction.
Yeah, got it.
So you're trying to calculate, I guess, your probability at winning that auction compared to the discount rate that you're bidding at and the gas price, and that's kind of the calculation you're looking at as far as, okay, is this a smart bid to make? Yeah, exactly. This past week, primarily because the weakness, as I mentioned, was I didn't have a full view of all the bids and the prices that they had quoted at for each auction, which is what the winner was doing at a industrial scale. So essentially, that I think those would be the key requirements to compete. It's can you see all the bids that are out there for existing auctions and what price they have bid at, and then 2 is what's the gas price you need to bid to effectively get in and be in an auction before time expires? And then what's the optimal, if there are no bids, what's the optimal price to start the bidding at to have an effective chance of winning based on the previous few auctions and who's been winning them? Got it. It's a few different levels there.
Yep.
Got it. And how do you currently compare liquidity available to keepers on decentralized versus centralized exchanges for going back to DAI after you've got the ETH?
I mean, getting DAI was pretty hard, especially large amounts of DAI to start bidding on some of these auctions because supply was the premium went to like 1.27 or something versus $1. So it was, it was pretty intense. So in terms of liquidity, there was definitely a liquidity crunch. But then now, I don't know. I mean, you guys saw the USDC stuff. It's kind of tricky how to even price that effectively now. It's 1.25 USDT for one DAI. So,
Yeah, that will help tremendously to make it easier get DAI from MCD itself. Because the stability fee will always be extremely small if you just need DAI for an hour or two. So that will help tremendously. And we will see a lot of more collaterals coming in to even make it even easier, right? So were you using centralized exchanges too, or just Uniswap, or how were you turning it back? Like basically, I'm asking from a pool perspective, right? If we want to make it non-custodial, it has to be on chain, right? And the options are limited there, at least for now.
Yeah, it's a tough one, especially in times of volatility, which is usually times of network congestion, to use just DEXs. So, I mean, I did use DYDX and Uniswap, but also extensively centralized exchanges as well, just to be honest.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky one.
All right. And
also, I'm wondering how often this bot activity could be not profitable. Some cases besides gas wars.
Yeah, gas is one aspect, and then the other is just the pricing, right? So I'll give you one concrete example. ETH was at 113, and we put in a bid at like, I think, 25%. Someone outbid us. We outbid it, and it became kind of a bidding war towards the end of the hour, really, really quickly. And eventually, we ended up winning with like 6% off. And ETH dipped 6% the next hour before we could essentially sell on a DEX in the same time, just because the gas would cost more. So in terms of the amount of ETH won versus the gas you're spending to then liquidate that ETH, it just didn't work out profit wise. So there's instances of that with high volatility where it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Makes
and I guess
sense.
in retrospect, in that situation, I guess because the price is moving so fast, it was hard for you to know you were kind of crossing that threshold. So in retrospect, you would have preferred to bow out of that auction earlier.
Exactly. It's like who folds first.
Yeah, but then at that point, you're losing the cost of the gas it took you to get into the auction. So you
Exactly.
kind of like put up your pot and then.
Precisely. Yeah.
Interesting.
How much did you spend at the time of high volatility? How much was to place one bet in terms of gas?
Yeah, so I mean, there was multiple transactions involved.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, some transactions were anywhere from $80 USD to 105, 110, and there's on average like 4 or 5 transactions for the bot to go through its full steps. So yeah, a few $100 sometimes.
Okay, so it also means that you can calculate the size of your bet, which makes sense at all. I mean, it doesn't make sense to bet for 10 or 50,000 maybe these conditions because it doesn't make up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So pooling could make sense, but okay, there are some.
So for you in that scenario, if you had had access to a more even just a pure pool of DAI, that would have been helpful to you because you could have at least, I guess, bumped up the size of the bids once you were in there to hopefully improve the return.
Exactly. Yep. And compete in more auctions as well, like larger auctions.
So that would it be the main kind of the source of competitive advantage for the pool, the shares economy of scale?
Yeah, I think that would be one of the biggest ones, one of the biggest features. And like being a source of liquidity in times of crunch. I mean, there were market makers struggling to source DAI at the time too. It was just such a liquidity crunch. So if it's locked in here and it's serving as a source of last resort for auctions, then it's always going to be there, right?
When you're bidding and so you're in the auction, you get past that threshold and then you're bidding. Is the lot size that you are bidding on, is that fixed and you're just changing the price that you're bidding at, or are both of those variable at that time?
So the open source bot, how it structures it is based on how much DAI you have in your VAT. So each individual kind of has a certain amount of DAI in their VAT, and that allows them to bid on certain auctions based on the lot sizes. So if you have a few thousand or a few 100,000, it makes a difference.
Got it. But then you have that DAI in your VAT, and then that's the total amount. You can use that at different, in different auctions, but then that's your the total amount that you can bid. So if there's, that DAI has to physically be moved over there, and you can't like bid more than that total amount in all the various auctions going on at any given one time.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if we had multiple players. I see this as kind of being, a couple different ways to play this. One is having kind of a network of keepers that, we figure out some way for them to access the liquidity only for these actions but maybe have something where you have to kind of put up some sort of stake or something to make sure that you're not being malicious. That they can then perform their own actions, kind of like how you were acting. So pay close attention, do manual changes, manual auction, or having more generic bot framework that maybe you wouldn't expect to be as successful in some of those scenarios, but maybe focus on the scenarios where it's day to day catching small when things are not volatile, low gas, just kind of using some assets to catch small wins here and there, but then also be geared specifically for when spreads start getting pretty high, taking some higher risk, higher reward bets to slide in when things are going, like if you can monitor it and see things are getting to 30-40%, putting in some backstop bids, but obviously eating a bunch of gas to do that.
Yep.
Okay, so both of those seem viable to you. I guess I don't see, like, in the regular cutthroat auction world how a geared bot, like you said, especially if it was open source, could compete. It kind of just needs to be either the very boring or very intense.
Yeah, I guess one way of looking at it is you kind of can win some and lose some as long as you have a consistent strategy. Right. So like for certain, like it's not like there are competitors out there for sure, but I mean, there's certain prices where it doesn't become competitive for folks. That's another thing that I noticed, where usually past 15% discounts, it didn't become kind of competitive for some of the most ruthless guys out there to start winning and to start bidding even. So yeah, I mean, that's another way to look at it, where you consistently keep bidding, even though you're open source. You could lose some auctions and kind of lose funds in that auctions, but then you make up for it by winning more over the long term.
Got it. Yeah. So you're saying that the people that are active and competitive aren't going to be participating day to day, accepting 5 or 10% wins.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense for certain strategies. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you have something that's low overhead and can do it consistently and turn the capital around, and maybe sometimes you lose a couple percent, but you consistently can get 5 to 12% or something like that, you might do okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That makes sense.
Yeah, but I guess all this again, there's a lot of parameters to take into play here, which is network congestion, volatility, ability to liquidate, competition, bids. So I think that's just simplifying that process as a whole is a huge value add for the community, so that we can just abstract it away and just access the protocol and make some higher level decisions rather than tuning every single parameter. So I think that's could also be a value add.
Yeah,
cool. What would you like?
It's a multi-step process, right? Like you have to, whether you're setting up a bot or if you're like, if it's just a front end, even to like enter the auction system, it's like you have to pay the gas to get in. You've got your pool of assets, and then kind of your command center, I guess, to bid.
Yeah. Hey, we were like discovering optimizations like on the fly, which is stressful, and we're burning money while doing it. But luckily we did all right. But still, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yep.
What do you think some of the most interesting problems we should set to be resourced? How to solve them if possible?
I guess key ones are how to effectively monitor bids on auctions, so that you can actually compete and win, and how to do that at kind of on a consistent basis, so that so that it doesn't go down. Like what kind of price oracles are you going to be using? What mechanisms will you use to select gas? And then finally, it's the kind of allocation. So how much funds can you put in, and what's kind of the discounts you're willing to take if you're the first bidder for an auction. So essentially, like for the auction keeper bot, there were kind of like a few main mechanisms. One was the execution, just like send the approval transaction, get money in the VAT. And then the other part was the pricing model, which is how are you going to do the pricing? And that's kind of taking into all these parameters that we discussed just now.
Got it. And so the one pricing parameter is where you kind of start your bidding. So you start at 30% discount, or you start at, 20% discount. Okay.
That's in the case of there's no bids existing. If there is, which is one key part, which is monitoring if they do exist bids, what prices are they at currently, and how often have they been coming in, to then decide, all right, are we going to bid higher and how much higher?
And so do you have to pay gas per bid?
Like
if you change your bid, do you have to pay gas on that?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, you don't want to get into, even if you're the first bid, if you think it's going to be something competitive, you don't necessarily want to start low, because that means you would have to kind of maybe burn gas, continuing to bid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you guys have an idea of how much DAI is required here? Like, what's the liquidity shortfall? It generally that needs to be bid on here. Like, is this like $1 million? Is it $10 million? Is it like what's the order of magnitude that we're talking about here?
Are you kind of asking what is the threshold to kind of get into a more competitive stance, or kind of more what the average or median lot sizes are?
No, like how much DAI do you have to essentially take offline in selling MKR in order to close the auction? Like MKR will be auctioned in exchange for DAI, right?
You're talking about the flop auction coming up later this week?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about participating in that right now. This is more for creating tools to hopefully allow more keepers to participate, and that will ideally lead to not having shortfalls in the future, because there'll be more participants and better tooling. But I think it was 5 or 6 million DAI, I think, and then there are lots. I'm not sure what the minimum lot is. I think it's something that is getting discussed on the maker call that's going on now, and they're going to do daily maker calls too, I think, as it approaches, for the exact specifications around bidding on that maker.
Minimum lot is 50,000, and it's being reduced as a protocol parameter change, so that the threshold is smaller for participation. But if we were to rephrase this question for the collateral auctions, what are the various folks' estimates on the minimum viable amount of DAI that makes it economically feasible to run the infrastructure, to fine tune it in order for this to be economically viable to run a keeper bot? Are we talking about tens of thousands of DAI, hundreds of thousands, or millions within, let's say, context of the next couple of months?
I would say hundreds of thousands. Most of the lot sizes that we noticed were in 500 ETH lots. And to compete in some of those, you just need anywhere from 50 to 100K to effectively compete. And then, the other parameter I forgot to mention that you can adjust is the number of auctions you're competing in. And so, it takes more network resources to compete in more auctions, because you're just monitoring a whole bunch of them. But we adjusted that parameter to be like 300 auctions at once. And it was, a pretty large sum. And, we were playing with anywhere from a couple of 100K of DAI to be in all of them, be in the game in all of them.
Okay, and what was the average turnaround time for the ETH and DAI for you to come back and bring liquidity back in auctions?
It depends on the auction timings. I mean, if you're getting in right before the auction ends, it's anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. Otherwise, then auctions go on for 6 hours, right? So your capital's kind of locked up if you've already placed a bid.
And then when you were using, let's say, decentralized exchanges versus centralized, after you obtained, what was the turnaround time in the periods of network congestions? How does it differ from the average volatility when the price moves fast, but it's not as bad as on Thursday? What's an average time for you to turn around capital from a DEX versus a centralized exchange?
With the centralized exchange, it's a bit different if you already have capital there to kind of hedge a bit. But with the DEX, for example, the extreme scenario, I guess the edge case is on Thursday, one transaction, even with a decent amount of pretty decent gas, took around 36 minutes. So yeah, it took around 3 hours turnaround time, full turnaround time from winning to liquidating and to selling on a DEX.
Wow, that's enormous. Okay, makes sense. So the most optimal strategy there is to start the process in parallel, right? And have just basically more liquidity available so that you can do, you can start selling right after you just won, right?
Exactly. It's like hedging basically, and you're exposed already to an extent, and then you're assuming certain wins, and then as soon as the win happens, you're liquidating.
Okay, I think there were a lot of interesting information, and I see that there are 10 newcomers. So hey guys, we did some interest about us, so to understand who is involved and how he she can contribute. So let's do a quick interest of you, and then we can proceed with our high-level architecture and other questions that our engineering team has. So yeah, let's do it quick. So Ryan, you started previously, so can you make some intro about you?
Okay. My name is Ryan Zur, formerly Polychain Capital Web3 Foundation. Was I think one of the first 4 or 5 people to invest in MakerDAO back in 2015, and at this point I run a multifamily office that's focused on alternative assets. We hold a fairly large MKR position, and I am looking to be much more active as a liquidity provider and essentially as a keeper, which is a name that I coined back in, I think this was 2016 or something like that. And so I feel like I should probably be a keeper at this point, supporting this network more directly than just being a passive investor. And so I'm super happy to do that. I have a bit of technical skills and some technical support within my team with Dean Eigenman, but we're looking for more. Essentially, we're looking to support a technical team with appropriate levels of capital.
Great.
And so, question, Ryan, what would be your key requirements towards a non-custodial pool as a liquidity provider? What would be the main items that you would look for before it becomes de-risked to the point of participation with some more or less not just play test funds, but a little bit.
Yeah, like when we're talking kind of big boy capital. So I want to see that the team is technically sophisticated, both from the perspective of being able to handle the myriad of issues with very complex smart contracts that Maker presents, obviously, as well as has a good quantitative strategy for approaching the keeper activities, and custodial, non-custodial is not like the biggest thing in the world for me. Like if it's a well-run organization that is based here in Switzerland or in the US, like the custodial part is fine, because when we're talking about millions of dollars, like we'll have each other's KYC and addresses anyways. So the non-custodial thing isn't as big of an advantage as some of you may think it is, although it's a good thing for scale of the network. It's just not that important for me in this very moment. Not to say that you shouldn't try to build something non-custodial, because I think that's a more scalable solution anyways for yourselves. But for me, it comes down to professionalism.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Interesting points you mentioned. Okay, let's go ahead. I think Keshav, are you here? Would you like to make an intro? Okay. Marion.
I'm here.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Hey. So yeah, I am basically active in Ethereum space for around 4 or 5 years or so. I'm invested in Ethereum, and of course I was using the system for a while. My background is I'm a software developer. I recently started a new company in Amsterdam, focusing on blockchain development, and I'm learning as I go. And all this stuff that happened a few days ago with regards to low bids on the lots enticed me to participate for the keeper. Last night I started to run the full node, and I want to start like a keeper as soon as possible. But as far as so I have capital to invest, and I'm ready to invest my time, but I'm definitely not up to par to contribute making this pool. So that's the story for now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Marion for K, would you like to make an intro? Okay, Shan3, are you here? Okay, Lloyd.
Yeah, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, I'm a blockchain engineer based out of Berlin, and I've also recently founded essentially an internal research-based company, which was founded by my parent company here in Berlin. I sort of saw all the fallout from last week and everything. I spent about $100 on gas closing my positions as that was all happening. So that was a lot of fun. But I saw all the fallout from the keeper things, and actually I was just a little bit shocked because I saw some reports that there was only one sort of keeper that was tuned effectively with input from various sources that could take advantage of this economically, which was really quite shocking. So yeah, that's how I sort of joined this, and I agree with Ryan that this whole conversation has been a lot of focus on decentralizing or making this pooling decentralized or non-custodial. But I mean, that's really, really quite difficult. If you have a look at things like Rocket Pool, what they're doing with the ETH staking, they're kind of trying to make this democratized sort of staking system. It's really quite tough. And I think this whole project would probably be quicker if you just did a hybrid solution, you know, and then kind of moved into decentralizing in the future. But yeah, I'm just happy to hear what everyone's doing and potentially be involved later on. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for your opinion. Okay. Okay, Corey, are you here? Would you like to make an intro?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem. I'm Corey Petty, CSO of Status IAM, and I founded and run the Bitcoin Podcast Network. Basically here I try to keep tabs of most of the stronger foundations of Ethereum with respect to kind of underlying security and provide whatever services we can if it's feasible, whether it be media stuff or status related infrastructure. Because we'd like to make sure our users can access these types of these toolings within our ecosystem. So we want to make sure that the underlying security of it works well. So keeping tabs on it and its peripherals like keepers and stuff is important to me.
Got it. Thank you. Peter, are you here? Peter M. would like to make an intro.
Hi guys, my name is Peter Moritz. I'm a trader very much and a consultant in a lot of ways. I just very big on the DeFi, and I just want to make sure I support the cause. I'm not technical, very advanced. So if anything you guys can do to make people like me can easily part of the auctions, that would be the keeper way fantastic. So I can also take part of it. I'm looking forward to help out the cause. Thank you.
Thank you as well. So we have few more people to introduce. John, are you here?
Yeah. I hope there's not more than one John, but yeah.
We have other John, but he has introduced already.
Okay, great. I'll be quick.
Sure.
I'm Calabrese. I've been involved in Ethereum for a while, and obviously in the DeFi space. My background is more on the product side, product management side, in fintech specifically, and come from the world of finance and don't have a strong tech background, but founded a company called NuFi recently with a co-founder who couldn't make it, named Herman Rogers, and we really want to solve the UX problem in the DeFi space. I'm interested in what you are doing to protect the ecosystem, right? Obviously, we can't have mass adoption without the ecosystem and the protocol being secure. So interested in seeing if I can help in any way. But yeah, you're not exactly the best tech, background, but work in tech. So I know everything about it, but don't code myself. So happy to hear more about what's going on here, though.
Okay, thank you. It's okay. I mean, product management is also very important, and we also need feedback and this stuff. So it's also very important. Okay. Also, we have other Ryan. Ryan, are you here?
Sorry.
Sorry. We have two Ryans, and I was asking for other Ryan. I guess maybe he's not here. Also, we have Martin. Martin, would you like to make an intro? Okay. And if I missed someone, you can make an intro right now, or if everything is settled, we can go ahead. So anyone would like to an intro?
Hi.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh,
sure.
Just quickly, I'm Juan Blanco from Ethereum, and just kind of here trying to see if I can help you. Anything. Okay.
Thank you. So if we met each other, so let's start with a high-level architecture our team has prepared. So Lena, can you please outline this and present?
Yes, sure.
Great.
For the newcomers, my name is Elena, and I'm leading the engineering at Atomica team. So I'm mostly responsible for all technical aspects of delivery for Atomica. And I'm here to hear the voice of community, to understand the needs, to understand the problems, and to get the scope of work to build the keepers pool which meets the community requirements. Let me share my screen. We have some high-level architecture proposal. Of course, this is the first draft, and this architecture will change, I believe, but we are ready to hear your feedback, your proposals, how the first keepers pool should look like. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I believe so. Okay. First of all, we have here the number of components, and let me explain their goals and their meaning. The first component is keepers pool. The keepers pool function is to gather and to store the assets which will be used by the other components like auction bot for performing, for handling the auctions. And the keepers pool, for the first draft, we consider the first pool in DAI, but in the future, in the next iteration, the keepers pool can be created in different assets. So the potential keepers can join the pool and can put liquidity in here. And this liquidity will be used by the second big component that we have here. And the second big component is an auction bot, the multi-threaded auction bot, which can use the auction strategy parameters defined by the keepers. Here the big question, how to define the auction strategy parameters and how they should look like. Some minutes ago, Sid shared his feedback about running the keepers bot and about the different strategies that were used. And I think the community experience about defining the strategy parameters for the first pool will be really helpful for us. So we see these strategy parameters as a set which is predefined for the first pool, voted by the all keepers, and then deployed to the smart contract. So this information is stored in the smart contract and can be updated. For the first pool, we consider just one auction strategy, but there is possibility to use many auction strategies parameters simultaneously, as well as they use the smart bots, which can balance between the different strategies during the auction events. The auction bot is actually multi-threaded. What does it mean? It means that the bot acts fast and can handle more than one auction at the same time. So the bot can perform simultaneously made transactions from different accounts. And of course, this automated bot is an on-chain smart contract which communicates and which makes bids on the MakerDAO auctions. And in case the bot wins, the liquidation fee and the profit will get to the keeper's pool. And here we have the big issue, the big question, and I hope to get community feedback about that. What do we do if there are not liquidations at this moment? Because usually we have lots of liquidations when there is, if price goes down, but at the same periods, the number of liquidation will be pretty slow. And what do we do with all this capital? Of course, the keepers probably want to use it, but probably have some ideas like put this capital to Compound or to other platforms and allow the keepers to get some yield in case there are no liquidations and all, and support some amount, some required amount of capital in the pool. So the biggest problems that we have here and the biggest issues that we are going to resolve first, it's define the auction strategy parameters. And it would be great if you share your feedback about how do you see the tuning the auction strategy parameters. The second, how to operate a pool in case of there are no liquidations. And the third question is about bot itself. Are you okay of using this smart contract which performs the automated strategy, or you would like just to use the pool with your own bots that you are going to operate on your infrastructure? That's the main question that I have here, and I'm ready to answer your question if you have some about this high-level architecture.
So let's just get a quick feedback, for example, from Sid, who seems to have a real hands-on experience in the volatile periods, right? What would be the number of strategies that, in your opinion, is optimal? Not too many, not too few? Would it be 2, 5, 10, or it could be quite a lot, and they may depend, and just the location will depend based on market conditions?
Yeah, I think just a few should be enough with good parameterization, so that the key parameters can be adjusted. Just because, I mean, you could even get away with a simple strategy as long as you can adjust your parameters in time. Parameters like we covered earlier, like gas and pricing, and you know, adjusting based on existing bids, for example.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and would the structure of the governance process around these parameters, let's say, beyond simple small community getting on a call, deciding on parameters, right? Would the maker governance structure be a good one to use, or you think it's too slow, or what would be your thoughts around changing and enacting these parameters? How fast should this happen? How agile should this process be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess it's up to the group in a sense of how it's going to be operated. If there's a central pool of capital that's going to be allocated to each of these strategies, the main benefit of adjusting the parameters is based on current network and market conditions, how volatile is ETH and how congested is ETH. And so I think that's the two main factors at play. So a lot of it can be automated. Only a few of these things need to have any manual interaction. So And for those, that's really like, you know, black swan type events where if something changes so dramatically, then need to really dramatically change the parameters.
Do you plan on being kind of manually directly involved kind of in auctions going forward, or are you really looking to kind of offload this part of exposure and don't see it as really being worthwhile to kind of be, you know, manually competing?
Yeah, I think yeah, personally, that's my motivation here is to kind of have an automated way to just be in the game, but not really competing at the level of last week, just because, you know, it's not really the word is kind of out, right? It's not really a game where you can win 0 ETH unless, you know, stuff seriously goes wrong again. So I think as a basic, this kind of serves as a sort of backstop where it automatically bids on auctions and gets a decent price for them. And having some capital in that is key.
Is it a feasible thing, you know, just kind of thinking through where the problems are and where the risk is, and, you know, just kind of where, you know, you were specifically, I guess, last week, you know, there's a thought about having a pool of capital available that's really only used for the auction while the keepers are fronting, you know, all the gas, because that's where the risk lies, right? As long as you're not bidding, you know, crazy amounts, you know, above the price. Is that something that you would see as being, you know, a viable thought, as well as having a mechanism for people to still kind of run their own keeper infrastructure as far as calculating, you know, how much gas they want to use and what they want to bid, but then having pool of capital that they can pull from just for the actual bid sizes?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Just thinking architecturally how to kind of achieve that might be tricky, just because, you know, you're especially in this world where you have like this VAT and you have funds in a VAT, to kind of mobilize those funds to only participate in certain auctions, depending on the person running their specific keeper bot, might be tricky. But, you know, have to look into that more to see how you can implement it technically.
Yeah, I think there'd have to be certain, like obviously like bid limits, like you wouldn't be able to, you know, but then like an automatic liquidation. So you'd probably have to be operating as a keeper, paying the gas for a smart contract, interacting with the auction mechanism. So I don't know, just a kind of a thought I had as far as seeing, you know, where, you know, how we can still allow people to take risk, but then maybe provide more liquidity. But yeah, I think the set it and forget it and people can participate bot is hopefully something we can work out that can meet a couple of goals.
Yeah. I guess one area where risk can be offloaded is where some of the key parameters can be adjusted based. So certain base level aspects can be met by the bot. I mean, as noted here, such as, you know, getting approved, getting a certain amount of capital in the VAT, and kind of monitoring all the auctions. And then the parameters could be, you know, pricing and gas paid for each of these for specific auctions, depending on how you're looking at it.
Okay. So
another, you know, the secondary goal, or I guess primary, depending on your perspective, of making sure that no one ever gets, you know, $0 bids again, we'd have to have some sort of aggressiveness threshold that makes it so that we never run out of capital in the pool, and always have bids. So if there's, you know, assets, so if there is, you know, you can monitor auctions, and if it's getting, you know, within an hour or some sort of period of time and there's 0 bids, you know, we'll be the, you know, the bidder of last resort at all times. But we have to kind of maybe adjust thresholds dynamically to make sure that we retain capital.
Okay. As a next step, I would propose, what do you guys think if we create 2 documents? One document would be a repository of basically identification of all the various risks that the keeper operation is associated with, be it the risk of getting squeezed and buying asset, let's say ETH at 120 while the price movement is very fast, right? And how to deal with it and so on. Another risk is X. So basically a identification, a catalog of all the various risks that are that exist associated with this operation, right? Associated with the individuals joining the pool and so on, right? Governance risk and so on, right? And then on the next call, discuss whether this list is comprehensive or not. And as soon as we come to a consensus that it's good enough, right? Then we, in the next step, we define what are we doing with each of these risks, right? And based on our experience building risk transfer products, insurance products in the Risk ecosystem, in Atomica, in MakerDAO ecosystem associated with new collaterals that are coming up, such as accounts receivables, there are pretty much only three things you can do with risk, right? And as a community, we also are not immune from these three actions. We can either decide to retain it, we can choose to mitigate it, or we can transfer this risk. So once we have a catalog of all the risks, then we can decide on what exactly are we doing with each of these risks, and have this risk management portion of the keeper pool dealt with to a point where there are no more major objections, no more risks identified, and everyone is comfortable moving forward with the rest of the design. And that's item number one. And number two, I would propose is to do the same and have a catalog of all the various parameters that the keeper pool may adjust that are important, more or less important, but have a catalog of all the various parameters. And then do the same thing. Once we agree that these are more or less a comprehensive list of parameters, then we decide what are we going to do with these parameters, which of them are more of a like critical to be more or less set, not set in stone, but not to be expected to be changed often, right? And what are the parameters to that are expected to be changed often, especially in the periods of high volatility. And based on that, we design the circuit breakers and things that make basically that goes in relation to the other risks. Like, for example, as a pool participant, I will have a risk that the governance, whoever decides on this pool parameters, right, will enact some changes that will harm me, right? And I don't want that to happen, so I want to make sure that certain parameters can be changed more often or with a short delay, right? But certain parameters should not. So I want to have clarity about what parameters are, what the risks are, and who can do changes and when, and how soon, and how much time do I have, and what circuit breakers are there to protect me, right? So this kind of the proposal I would like to make is to put together these two lists. One is for the risk, another is for the parameters, and then just go through them until we have more or less comprehensive list of both. Does it make sense? Anyone who wants to work with me on this, if it's acceptable, objections, ideas?
Makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, CTO also mentioned 2 times about pricing models, but we didn't elaborate on it very much. Can you like outline like few nuances regarding this?
For regarding pricing models?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, essentially the key things to consider is what the key questions to answer are, what's the source of pricing, especially during volatile times, a combination of different exchange APIs or whatever that is. What is the fair market value of the pricing? And then what's the discount that's being applied to that pricing? And the discount is a function of the current number of bids, what prices they are at, and then also on average, what's the kind of optimal discount to apply, which is kind of where the crux of the model lies.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay. Maybe anyone else have comments, feedback on the high-level architecture? Any critics, suggestions?
Yes, somewhat. Just some questions.
Sure.
Maybe it's a bit too detailed, but I was just sort of writing in the chat as well. So, and it's like it's going to have to be a hybrid solution in the end, right? Like there can be some things that can be smart contracts. For example, the pool could easily be a contract, and maybe you can get some proportionate tokens like you do with Compound and so on, and then you can always claim your portion of the pool back and things like that. The auction rules, yeah, that could be, you know, all mathematical based and so on in a contract. Also, the actually executing, you know, against the maker smart contracts to perform all the different actions that can be run from a smart contract. But what's the heartbeat of this whole system? Like, is there a third-party server running somewhere, or is the idea to use the existing? I've never run a keeper before, but I know there's some Dockerized things that Maker has set up. And is the idea to kind of rewrite all of the contract interactions from scratch, or to utilize existing traditional, you know, software that's out there?
Actually, the method which starts handling the auctions can be public and can be called by everyone, and can be allowed to call everyone, because we can create the parameters which allow to execute the transaction only with a particular conditions. So it means that for the start, for example, Atomica can run the scheduled script which will call this public method at the start, but this public method is also available for all participants, so everyone can run such software to call the auction bot public methods. Does it make sense?
Yeah, somewhat. So is the intention that all of the smart contracts will be in place, and it's up to the people who have pooled in the keeper pool to execute the transactions, to start them on their own? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, they can, but actually there could be a kind of automated software which is running somewhere in the cloud, which can call the public methods of the auction bots. And this software can be run by one or more than one companies. It can be run by individuals, or anyone can call the public methods of the auction bots. So it means that it's decentralized, and at least someone, in case of the auction stops working, someone can call this method and run the transactions.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so for our liquidation tool that we built, there's going to need to be some sort of kind of oracle, I guess, for lack of a better word, for but it should be fairly simple, and if we have enough people running it, hopefully that'll be a good, you know, sturdy enough solution to meet the needs.
Yeah, I was also wondering, this might be a bit too complicated as well. Would there be some way to almost maybe use something like the gas station network or relays to kind of almost publish potential trades, or publish potential auctions, and allow people to take those actions, or something like that? Yeah, probably too complicated, but
I mean, if the infrastructure, if we have to build, I guess, the infrastructure to make kind of these Oracle things, kind of things available, you know, I guess that's something that could be opened up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a website, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. It's called dieauctions.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it turned out to be kind of buggy over the course of the past week, where it's essentially like a constant stream of all the auctions that are going on right now and all the bids that are coming in, but what price they're bidding at. And along with the current ETH price, of course. So essentially, something like that has to be, programmatically built here to monitor all the bids, and then and make some sort of judgment on how to bid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally makes sense, and that has to be done at the mempool level, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, makes sense. Sid, what do you think are the top list of risks for an individual keeper bot operator, and how are these risks different from a pooled keeper bot, which uses basically other people's money?
It's pretty much similar risks. I think the pooled keeper bot, I guess, has potentially access to more capital. In fact, some of the risks of the individual pooled keeper bot might be sensitive as well. I guess it was brought up in the chat, where if the code is open source, if the strategies are open sourced, then other people can try to reverse engineer and try to beat it to an extent, which is a valid risk. But if some of the strategies are parameterizable and the members of the pool can adjust them as they wish, deciding where that demarcation lies, what is set in stone, what is kind of automated, and what is manual, that's a key aspect to mitigate those risks.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Got it. And one question about the risks associated with the quality and reliability of price feeds that the operator is relying on. What are the main requirements for the price feeds?
Depends on kind of where the winnings are going to be liquidated, right, or hedged. I mean, definitely having some price feeds from the major exchanges where the trading pairs exist. I mean, especially if you're doing it in a decentralized manner, having that robust is key. But then at the same time, we saw impacts where other centralized exchanges impacted movements indexes, and so having some kind of backstop there as well would also be pretty key for any sort of oracle, where you're monitoring both.
The backstop?
Kind of monitoring both centralized and decentralized exchanges, not just sticking to decentralized exchanges for the oracle side of things, even if you execute on dexes only.
I see. And would you apply some weight as far as application of this price feed, whether you are actually using that very exchange and how fast you can turn around the capital, or would you start with just a simple, just accepting the feed for the most objective price in the market, right? Regardless of which venue you are actually using to liquidate.
Yeah, it's like a universal question for a lot of the market makers today, right? Like, what is the fair market price? But I would actually err more on the side of using a universal price, just because, especially with dexes, the spreads are sometimes become pretty high in times of high volatility, and that's something we noticed last week, where there's a difference between the maker OSM Oracle price, between a DEX price, and between a centralized exchange price for the same asset. And so, kind of having a basket that represents that would be more efficient.
Okay, makes sense.
I guess that I mean, from my perspective, that doesn't make sense to only look at like where you can actually liquidate the ETH at, because that's what really kind of matters is, what can you shift your ETH back to DAI to get it turned around.
Yeah, I guess the main point of differentiator there is latency, where, for example, you can take a centralized exchange's price that is different than a DEX. And then at the time that you're actually liquidating, the DEX has caught up with the centralized exchange's price. If there was,
I see the point. Yeah. So saying that centralized exchanges are probably, at least including them makes more sense to get a price, idea of the real price with the idea.
Exactly.
That centralized
the point Sid is making is that I would translate it into the risk conversation, right? If you're just considering the price from the only place or places where you were liquidating, right? Then you're retaining the risk of the price being higher or lower, right? Whatever the direction is, and you are retaining the risk that by the time you actually will be liquidating, the price will be normalized to higher or lower, right? So, but if you don't want to retain this risk, but you want to mitigate it, you take the price of the market and you assume that the markets always come to equilibrium, and market makers may bring their liquidity the next minute, right, to that exchange, and things will get normal. It's about what do you do with this risk, right, of the large spreads or inefficiencies, right? Do you retain it or you mitigate it? Does it make sense, Sid? Am I describing it correctly? Or
Precisely.
Yep. Sid, did you guys were you concerned with monitoring the size of potential auctions that were coming and seeing which price levels that there were large chunks of vaults that would be hit liquidation and then prep on that, or are you really just looking at what's live and active now?
Yeah, 100%. That's another huge point to keep in mind, especially when they kind of expire. So, for example, when ETH potentially could hit key price levels of 99, certain vaults come into play. Several million worth of vaults come into play. But now with the recent changes, now that the auctions go on for 6 hours, that's kind of mitigated to a certain extent because you can see bids come in and then you can have some time to put in other competing bids. But prior to that, as soon as something came into play, you had to act on it. So it was a time sensitive issue.
But is it safe to say that most of the activity for the bidding comes in right near the end?
Not really. I mean, when you have bots, a lot of the bots, the unsophisticated strategies are just bidding prices every 60 seconds, for example, for the currently open auctions. So for example, something comes online and you decide here's the fair market price to bid for it, and you bid for it. And then that evolves over time, over the course of the 6 hours. And towards the end, if there is no competition, there is no competition. If there is, then you're bidded up to a certain degree where someone has to drop out.
But then it's pretty, so I guess when you say drop out, does that, you just mean they stop bidding?
Yeah, exactly. Stop bidding a higher price where it's not worth it for them.
So for normal scenarios where it's not, I guess, crazy competitive, what's your take on how long does it usually take for bidding to stop? Because I guess it's, we quickly find, I guess, people's thresholds, and then people just accept that person wins, and then we all just kind of move on, right?
Yeah, I guess there's a hard and fast stop when the auction closes, and that's like a time limit at the end of the 6 hours. And then, before that is more of a kind of market microstructure thing where you're observing the participants and seeing who's bidding and then what's their kind of limits, right?
Yeah, but is it common for the last bid to be, it took an hour for people bidding back and forth, and then just for the next 5 hours there are no bids, or is it
not really? I mean, from what we saw, it's consistent bids coming in almost every hour. But then again, it's a new market right now, especially with the 6 hour changes hasn't been implemented for a while, so you haven't had the chance to see the market play out, but over the coming days and weeks, I guess it should be very clear how it's working.
Okay. Got it. Cool. Yeah, it's something we can take into. I do think one of the important things to include with this is some sort of, keeper of last resort component. And I think that would be kind of monitoring, maybe this doesn't meet our, making sure that, okay, there's an hour left in the auction. If there are no bids, let's just get something in, you know, whatever it is, and like optimizing for that a bit.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this part that we just have a vote on what would be the percentage of like what is an ethical moral obligation that we have towards maker ecosystem, right? And how much advantage do we want to take of the situation if there will be any, right? Is it 0.7? Is it 0.85 or 0.5, right? And just put it as a parameter and make sure that we just keep it there, and we agree not to basically take people's arms and legs if the situation exists, right? So Sid, in your opinion, what is the amount where it's kind of where the percentages become abnormally high? Is it like lower than 80% or 70 or?
I think one way to think about it is in terms of the current volatility of ETH. So when ETH goes down, say 10% in half an hour, then bidding 90 or 80% even doesn't make sense, right? Perhaps again, that's related to the Oracle scenario where you're monitoring the prices over the course of the last 6 hours, hour, minute, etc., and making a calculation based on volatility, how you want to price it.
Got it. So basically making it more smarter than just a fixed number so that it's adjusted for volatility. The higher the volatility, the lower the number, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, I see. All right. Well, then the question is how low is too low, right? If volatility is high.
Yeah, I guess that's the question. I mean,
there's been a lot of great information. I think what we can kind of do is start working on a risk model and just kind of figure out the solutions we want to optimize for. I think we've got some good ideas from this feedback that we can take to hopefully build something that would meet a lot of these goals of making sure we don't have these like zero value auctions, be a last bidder on every auction, but then also find a way to hopefully be reasonably competitive in different market environments without there having to be too much manual intervention, and whether we make that kind of by a select group or one person or a DAO, or have it be fully separated, we can or allow people to kind of tweak their own, we can figure that out.
Very cool. Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah, because I think with the idea of pooling liquidity and if these scenarios where there are a good chunk of liquidations, it makes sense to have a central somewhat strategy so you can deploy the more capital you can deploy, the lower the percentage cost of gas for each bid. So I don't think we want to get in the business of putting in a lot of bids with the same amount of capital, but maybe one method of having kind of the slow, or not slow, but consistent bot just kind of doing its thing, but then having maybe ways that people can access the liquidity and front their own gas to take that risk themselves, maybe could be a nice balance.
That's a cool idea.
Cool.
Okay, well, we're running on top of the hour, over the hour now. Would anyone have any proposals or questions about what the expectations are, maybe as far as like how fast, what should we focus on? If not, I would suggest we pick up some action items. I will take one. Basically, I can do this wrap up, but would anyone have any questions or ideas, proposals?
Yeah, I have a thought. It's not technical related, it's more financial for this whole kind of enterprise, this whole solution. I mean, this seems like a really good candidate for like a Gitcoin grant or a ETH Foundation grant or something like that. Do you guys think? I mean, it helps the ecosystem. It helps DeFi to, you know, maintain a good image, and Maker, like it or not, Maker is a like integral part of this whole movement now. So, I mean, I think that'd be worthwhile exploring as well.
Are you suggesting collaboration, asking for feedback, or applying for grant? What exactly are you referring to?
Throw out Gitcoin for a possible grant. Yeah, right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying you were saying throw it on you know, Gitcoin for possible funding, and I guess the matching grants or Ethereum Foundation grant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really great idea, Boyd. If you would like to take a crack at making a simple draft, we would totally jump on it and nail it and have it out there. I think it's a great idea. Some people will totally support it because it's not just the problem that the Maker ecosystem has, right? It's a common problem with all asset-based relationships, right? Whether it's a source liquidity like DAI is minted by the Maker system, or whether it's a money market like Compound, right? Which is using liquidity that has not been minted, right? And plus there are plenty of other protocols and applications that are relying on it. And so with the objective of generalizing the work that we're doing, right, and making it more applicable, more usable by other projects, that's certainly, I think, something that would find quite a lot of support from the community.
Yeah, and I ask it as well because for all the people that are on this call, I'm not sure of what your work situation is. I imagine most of us have full-time work or some sort of other projects going on. So having support from the community is always helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Boyd, if you're interested in just making like a 10-line or half a page draft of it, that would be nice to see. Just share a link in Telegram, or put it as an issue, or in the GitHub, and we'll jump on it and try add more meat to the bones, right? Manuel from Protofire has a lot of experience applying for grants, including they've been developing a tool chain for Solidity developers, linting tool called Solhint, and they recently received a grant from Ethereum Foundation to embed it into the IDE. So I think they could help put more meat and make it in a structure that fits the expectations of those who are reviewing the grants. And we could also send it to Maker Foundation itself, which also issued grants in the past to team members from Protofire. So I totally would support this, and I'm willing to contribute to this document.
Yeah, okay.
Peter?
Can you put the details of that person you're just speaking about? I'm not familiar. Or just so I can email them and have a chat about their experience.
Yeah, here's my email, and you can find me in Telegram. And Peter,
yes, sir.
Would you like to participate as well?
Well, that's what I was going to say about apply for Maker. I was just about to say that. I mean, you know, they'll give out grants, and I think would be definitely beneficial for them because we are trying to help them out to make sure something like that doesn't happen. And what do you think about the flash loans that was mentioned in the chat that I was watching? You know, I think the combination having a child and earn interest and using flash loans, especially if you know, the time is a little bit less down to less 30 minutes, whatever was the issue timeline, to use the flash loan on it. Just a question because I'm not a technical guy. So.
Well, I think the tricky thing with the flash loan is you have to, I don't think you'd be able to time it so that you get the winning bid.
Yeah.
It closes, you get, so you have to get the ETH, sell it, put in the last bid right as it's closing. It closes in the transaction, extract that, sell it, and put it back. So I think that timing is tricky. I think a lot of the discussion on using flash loans for Maker is actually to save people from liquidation. So it's as approach before they get to 150, you know, taking the flash loan, selling it to DAI, paying off their debt, taking the collateral, selling that, and then taking their collateral to pay back the flash loan. So avoiding liquidation. Something that another kind of
how I saw the flash loans. Konstantin mentioned that, well, because it's a multi-block process, right? And it may take, you know, 20-30 minutes before auction is resolved, or longer, it might be hours. Where I determined that where flash loans may have legs and could help bring keeper pool some competitive edge is in the very last leg of the process. So for example, once the ETH is won in an auction, right? Instead of waiting for another block to send it to an exchange, right? Or to whatever venue we're liquidating it, we could probably use the flash loan to turn it around quicker. So that's, I'm not sure what problems might be associated with that. You guys have any thoughts about this? Is it feasible? Is it not? Is it a good idea, or we should just ditch it for now?
Yeah, you still have to go to the open market to swap. I'm not sure exactly how you would do that.
Yeah, because you have to return it in the same transaction or the same block, basically. It makes it pretty difficult.
Yeah,
well, I'm not describing the centralized exchanges. I'm talking about decentralized exchanges like Uniswap, or if there will be an equivalent of Curve Finance, right, for ETH to DAI, low slippage pool.
Yeah, I just don't see where they'd come into play. You know, unless there's some mechanism for using the assets to, unless you're going to have such slippage in your transaction that you could have some benefit by taking the, you know, the flash loan, selling some, and then adding liquidity, then doing your transaction, and then taking everything and paying it back. But I think that's more of a niche kind of scenario. And you know, the way that volumes are increasing on decentralized exchanges will be less of a problem going forward.
Okay, makes sense. So guys, I have to go soon, but what I could do, I could take as a homework for this week before the next community call, I could take a crack at this documenting a list of risks, at least putting a structure around it, and let the folks in the chat review it and see if we can get a comprehensive list of these risks, nail them, and then the next week, or maybe even this week, to start putting ideas on what can be done about them, whether we retain them in the pool, in the keeper pool, or we mitigate them, or maybe there is a way to transfer it. So that's what I can do this week. If anyone wants to collaborate in an early draft, please ping me or let me know. I would like to ask Sid if you would be interested in doing the same, but for the strategies, like how many, like 3, 5, and what those might be. How would they be different from each other? Would it be of interest to you?
Yeah, for sure. Sounds good.
Okay, great. And then we have, would anybody be interested in documenting all of the various parameters and taking a lead on that thread?
Yeah, I mean, Vadim and I, we can work on getting the, I guess that started and shared out with the community.
Okay, awesome.
Sounds good.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Sid.